Welcome to today's deep dive, listeners. We're going to be digging into some really interesting data today about trade between Denmark and Thailand. And, when you think about global trade, it's not always the first pair of countries that springs to mind, right?
Yeah,
But, as we often find in these deep dives, the numbers tell a fascinating story, and there are some real surprises in the data this time around.
definitely.
For example, get this. Between 2019 and 2023, Danish exports to Thailand that they never even crossed the border, they increased by a massive 270%.
Wow.
Yeah, 270% growth without anything physically being shipped. So how is that even possible? Well, that's what we're going to be unpacking today.
Yeah, that really highlights how, we tend to think of shipping containers crossing oceans when we think about international trade. But the reality is much more nuanced. Services, things that can't be loaded onto a ship, are playing an increasingly important role.
I think you're spot on there. Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves trying to solve that mystery of the non-crossing exports, let's lay a little groundwork, set the stage. We're working with two main sets of data today. We've got the balance of payments, also known as BB, and we've got foreign trade statistics, which is also known as UHV. Now, imagine these as two different lenses that we can use to view this trade relationship.
Okay.
So our first lens, the BB data, that gives us the big picture. It tracks every single financial transaction that's tied to trade, even if the goods or services themselves didn't actually originate in the countries involved. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
And it points to how interconnected things are. Even when we're talking about goods that might be physically made in one country, the financial and the expertise flows are global.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where our second lens, that UHV data, comes in. So this one zooms in specifically on what's physically crossing borders.
Makes sense.
So it paints a different but equally important picture of the trade relationship. It's all about the tangible stuff.
Right. It's the difference between, say, a Danish company shipping a finished product to Thailand versus maybe providing the design or the technology for something produced directly in Thailand.
Exactly. Okay, so let me give you a specific example because I think it will help clarify things. Let's talk about Danish butter cookies,
Okay.
a classic.
Right.
Okay.
Delicious.
So let's say there's a Danish company, but they're based in Thailand. They're using, of course, Danish recipes, Danish expertise, and they're baking those cookies locally in Thailand. Then they sell those cookies within Thailand. Those ingredients, they might even be sourced from a third country entirely.
Right.
Now, the BB data would actually capture this whole transaction because it involves Danish expertise, right? And
Yeah.
it impacts those financial flows. But the UHV data, it wouldn't record this because those cookies never physically left Thailand.
That's a really good example. It shows how you can have a situation where there is clear economic activity and trade happening, but it might not be reflected in the traditional sense of goods crossing borders.
Exactly, and that's why having both of these lenses, the BB and the UHV, is so crucial for understanding all the nuances of global trade, especially in this day and age. So, with that in mind, let's actually put on those lenses and see what we find when we take a look at Denmark and Thailand. First up, the big picture. In 2023, the total trade between these two countries, according to our BB data, was valued at 12.5 billion DKK.
Okay.
Now, that might sound small compared to Denmark's trade with, say, Germany or other European neighbors.
Sure.
But get this. Thailand actually ranks as Denmark's 42nd largest export market.
And that is significant, especially when you consider the geographical distance and the differences in, economic structures between the two countries. It really underscores how even countries that seem geographically distant can have a surprisingly significant role in a nation's trade network.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got this surprisingly strong trade relationship going on. Let's take a closer look at the actual goods themselves. What are Danish businesses actually selling to Thailand?
Right. Let's get specific.
So in 2023, the top three categories, just to give you a sense of what we're talking about here, were hides, skins, and furs,
Interesting.
which brought in, get this, 948.3 million DKK.
Wow.
That's a lot of hides, skins, and furs.
It is. And it kind of, points to a historical aspect of Danish expertise, doesn't it?
Oh, tell me more.
Well, Denmark has this long-standing tradition in leather and fur production going back centuries.
Right, that's right.
And it seems like this expertise, this know-how, it continues to be really valued in the global marketplace. And clearly, it's finding a strong customer base in Thailand.
That is fascinating. So we've got our, more traditional industries that are still going strong, but it seems like our pharmaceutical and chemical industries are also, making their mark in Thailand as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, those categories took the second and third spots for Danish exports.
Okay.
So medical and pharmaceutical products, they came in at 561 million DKK.
Okay.
And then chemical materials and products, that reached 232 million DKK in 2023.
So we're seeing a bit of a pattern here, aren't we? It highlights this concept of specialization in international trade. Each country kind of leverages its unique strengths, its areas of expertise, and then finds those markets that really value those strengths. And that's what creates this, mutually beneficial situation.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've talked about what Denmark is sending to Thailand. What about the goods coming the other way, from Thailand to Denmark? What are we importing?
Well, the largest import category from Thailand is processed goods.
Processed goods, okay.
Although, and this is where it gets a little interesting, the total import value from this category, it actually decreased in 2023 compared to 2022.
Oh, okay. So we've got a decline there.
We do.
Why the drop? I mean, are there just fewer processed goods being produced in Thailand, or are there other factors at play?
It's really hard to say for sure without, digging a little deeper into the specifics.
Of course.
But it raises a really important question. Were there any supply chain disruptions maybe caused by, we've had a lot of global events these past few years?
Right.
Or changes in, what if consumer demand for those specific goods has shifted? It's possible that these broader global economic factors are influencing this trend, and it's definitely something we want to, kind of keep an eye on as we move forward in our analysis.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle, isn't it? You've got all these different pieces, and as you start to analyze them together, you can start to see this bigger economic picture emerge.
Exactly. And sometimes it's those unexpected pieces, like a decline in imports when maybe we expect growth. Those are the ones that can lead to the most intriguing discoveries.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've looked at the close-up view, the snapshot of 2023 data, but what does this actually tell us about the bigger picture? Let's shift gears a little bit and take a look at how Danish-Thai trade has evolved over time, say from 2019 to 2024.
Okay, so we're looking at the trends over time here.
Yeah.
And it's pretty clear that Danish exports to Thailand have been on this,
Upward trajectory.
upward climb. Yeah, and with a really notable jump in 2023.
Right, 8.5%.
8.5%, that's huge.
It is, yeah.
Especially considering, the global context in recent years.
Absolutely.
But within that overall growth, we also see that fascinating trend, right?
Yeah.
That we talked about at the beginning, this 270% surge in what we've been calling the non-crossing exports.
Right, or invisible exports.
Yeah.
So this really gets to that, the booming world of services.
Okay.
Which, as I've said, I mean, this is becoming more and more the backbone of the global economy.
So instead of shipping like physical products, are we talking about Danish companies basically sending like software, consulting services, financial expertise, that kind of thing to Thailand? Exactly. I mean, think about it. Even if you're buying a physical product that says made in Thailand, chances are there's a Danish company somewhere that's provided the logistics for that product to get there, or the marketing, or the design even. That's just how globalized things have become.
That makes total sense. So this 270% increase in Danish services going to Thailand, this could indicate that there's like a rising demand for that specialized knowledge or for, digital solutions, something like that.
Precisely. And it speaks to Denmark's, growing reputation as a provider of those in-demand services.
Okay, so we've got exports booming, particularly in this digital sphere, which is super interesting.
Right.
But then we have this counterpoint,
Yeah.
this decline.
Yeah. Quite a significant decline.
A significant decline in those imports from Thailand.
In the first 7 months of 2024. Yeah.
Down by, remind me,
22.9%.
22.9%. That's pretty substantial.
It is. And, it begs the question, what's going on there while other things are still climbing?
Exactly. What could be causing that?
Yeah. I mean, it's really too early to say for sure.
Of course.
But this is where those global economic factors we touched on earlier,
yeah.
Those really come into play.
Right.
We know that when there's uncertainty in the global market.
Right, because we had a lot of that.
We've had a lot of that, exactly.
Yeah.
And that can lead businesses to, be a little more cautious, make different decisions.
Absolutely.
So perhaps companies are being more cautious about where they're sourcing their processed goods from, given all this uncertainty.
Okay, so maybe looking at other countries because of, like you said, geopolitical instability, things like that.
Exactly. Or it's possible There have been shifts in the global supply chains themselves,
Oh, interesting.
making other countries maybe more attractive, for those goods that Denmark's typically been getting from Thailand.
Like a domino effect almost.
It really highlights that interconnectedness, yeah.
Yeah.
One seemingly small change in one part of the world can have these ripple effects that, impact trade relationships everywhere.
Absolutely. And that brings us to, I think, another piece of the puzzle here, which is, what we've talked about goods going back and forth.
Right.
But what about Danish investments in Thailand?
Ah, yes.
Because this isn't just about like buying and selling,
I
right?
know, not at all.
This is about a different kind of relationship.
Yeah, this is about really building a long-term presence, fostering those deeper economic ties.
So tell me more about these investments, because I know that Denmark has invested almost 4 billion DKK in the Thai market.
Right, and that's significant.
It's a lot of money.
It is, and it's not just, buying stocks or bonds.
Mm.
This is what we call foreign direct investment, or FDI.
Okay, FDI.
And a great example of this, we mentioned earlier there are 78 Danish subsidiaries that are actually operating in Thailand.
Right, and those aren't just, businesses.
Right.
We're talking about people.
Exactly, livelihoods.
They employ, what is it, over 46,000 people.
It's a significant impact.
That's huge for the
Yeah.
Thai economy.
Absolutely.
So then that makes me wonder, are some of these subsidiaries actually manufacturing goods in Thailand that are then being shipped back to Denmark?
That's a great question. It's definitely possible.
Mm.
And it could be another piece of the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
Explaining part of this dynamic we've observed with imports and exports.
Because it adds like a whole other layer to the relationship,
Absolutely.
If you've got Danish companies that are, yes, they're trading goods, but they're also establishing a strong presence in Thailand. They're producing there.
It's a much more multifaceted relationship.
It shows how these trade numbers, they represent something much more interconnected and complex than we might initially imagine.
It's not just about what crosses borders. It's about the expertise, the investment, the relationships that underpin those transactions.
Okay, so we've got these exciting growth trends, especially in services,
Yeah.
but also some headwinds like this global uncertainty and maybe some shifts in where companies are choosing to source their goods.
Right. So the question becomes, where do we go from here with all of this?
It seems like, sometimes these deep dives, we end up with more questions than answers.
That's true, yeah.
But that's part of what makes it so fascinating, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's about kind of peeling back the layers and getting a glimpse into, how these global forces are interacting.
Exactly. So I guess the big question then is, what does all this tell us about the future of Danish-Thai trade?
Right. Where do we go from here?
Because, we see these trends and they give us some clues, right?
They do. For example, will we see, this shift toward services continue to accelerate? Could we see, Denmark and Thailand working even more closely together in sectors like, green technology or sustainable development? Those are areas where, there's already some overlap, right?
Right. And those are the areas where there's huge potential for growth globally, I would say.
Absolutely.
But then, on the other hand, we've got this geopolitical uncertainty. We've got these economic headwinds. Could those things create new barriers, new challenges for Danish-Thai trade?
It's certainly a possibility. We've seen how interconnected everything is.
Right, exactly.
So it's really hard to predict anything with certainty.
It feels like, this deep dive has taken us right to the edge of something really exciting.
Yeah.
But maybe a little bit unpredictable as well.
The beauty and the challenge of the global economy. Right.
Exactly. So I guess I'm curious, based on, everything that we've discussed today, what do you think are like some of the biggest opportunities or even challenges that you see on the horizon for Danish-Thai trade for these two countries?
Well, if you look at, just to kind of recap some of those strengths.
Yeah.
Denmark has this incredible expertise in areas like, renewable energy, sustainable solutions.
Right.
While Thailand is a hub for, manufacturing agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
Could there be potential for them to, combine those strengths even more, collaborate on these innovative projects that really benefit both economies?
It's like, they each bring something unique to the table.
Exactly.
And then you've got this growing digital connection between the two countries, right? Talked about the services.
Right.
Could that lead to like even more knowledge sharing, more partnerships? I'm thinking, software development, fintech, e-commerce, all of that.
Oh, absolutely. The potential there is enormous, especially as more and more of the global economy, moves online.
But then, of course, we have to acknowledge, no trade relationship exists in a vacuum.
Exactly.
Global events can change things.
Economic shifts,
Hmm.
political changes.
All of that can create both opportunities and obstacles.
It's this constant dance, between these different forces.
So it seems like, the key takeaway here, if there is one, is that
Adaptability.
adaptability, yeah, and staying informed.
Absolutely.
Those are going to be key for both countries.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Well, this deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about when it comes to the future of Danish-Thai trade.
It's a dynamic relationship, that's for sure. And, who knows what the future holds, but there's a lot of potential there.
It certainly seems that way. And on that note, listeners, we'll leave you with something to ponder. What possibilities exist when two nations, each with these unique strengths, these interconnected economies, when they work together? What could the future hold for Danish-Thai trade? This has been your deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed exploring these fascinating insights with us.